In fourth grade, the reading standard that was addressed during our activity was develop and demonstrate reading skills in response to text by drawing conclusions and inferring by referencing textual evidence of what the text says explicitly as well as inferences drawn. And in fifth grade, the standard was very similar. Develop and demonstrate reading skills in response to text by drawing conclusions and inferring by referencing text evidence to support analysis of what the text says explicitly as well as inferences drawn from the text. And for the activity, we had a mystery reader from the district come. 5 different staff members dressed up in rock and roll gear and read the book Sweet Child of Mine. And so they talked about what the lyrics of the song actually meant. We did some dancing. It was really fun. And then students worked on identifying the text structure of a nonfiction passage by using clues from the text. Teachers read a passage to the students, and if students could correctly identify the structure of the text, they got to move a disc on a digital Connect 4 board. And so their goal was to play back and forth and get the questions correct so they can move discs and get 4 in a row.
In the fourth grade classroom, the students walked into a glow-in-the-dark classroom where they worked together to answer task cards about decomposing equivalent and adding and subtracting fractions. In teams, students worked together and determined the correct answer. They then took turns playing Jenga, with each block wrapped in glow-in-the-dark tape. The standards fell under numbers, cents, and operations, and fractions, which included fraction equivalents and comparing fractions. In addition, we also covered adding and subtracting with adding and decomposing fractions.
Both the 4th and 5th grade did a similar activity. The standard covered for both grades fell under the correlation of speaking and listening 1A and 1C. The students used their listening skills and strategies to problem solve in a group setting. This included listening to and following multi-step directions. They had to practice listening to other group members' ideas and stating in a positive way why they agreed or disagreed. They also had to practice conveying their own thoughts on how to problem solve. In addition, they had to demonstrate how to function as a whole group in order to make decisions that were based on the majority's opinion. The activity that they did to meet these standards was a breakout box. This was one of my favorite activities of the day. This year has been anything but typical because of social distancing and in some cases distance learning. The students have focused a lot on individual work. Today's activity was all about working together while wearing our masks and following guidelines, of course. You could see the excitement in their eyes as they found the clues and worked together to solve them. I saw students who sometimes tend to be more quiet speak up with how they thought the group should proceed. The pride when others congratulated them on conveying a successful problem-solving technique. All of the students were successful in finding all the clues, which enabled them to figure out the combos for the 5 different locks. Once they opened the breakout box, they were rewarded with a new themed pencil. Do you remember how cool it was to have a themed pencil? Rock Your School Day is a day the students will not soon forget.
In PE with Coach Colt, the students have been working so hard on their presidential fitness test, so they got to take a little break from that to just dance. Coach Colt had the music blaring and the dance moves were rocking. In health with Coach Rulo, the students got to learn all about how music can affect our mental and physical health. They got to listen to several songs and kind of write and draw about how those songs made them feel. And then they got to pick their own favorite songs that they already love and describe how those songs made them feel mentally and physically.
The 5th grade students also walked into a glow-in-the-dark classroom where they worked together to answer task cards about adding, subtracting, multiplying decimals, and 3- and 4-digit multiplication and division of whole numbers. They too played Jenga after they had found the correct answer for each question. The standards they worked on were number, cents, and operations in base 10. This included using their understanding of the place value system to perform operations with multi-digit numbers to the billions and decimals to the thousands.
The standard addressed during our 4th grade language arts rotation during Rock Your School Day was communicating using the conventions of English language. For example, using helping verbs, ordering adjectives, and creating subject-to-verb agreement. In our language arts rotation, students worked individually or in groups to work on identifying different parts of speech and working to sharpen their grammar skills. Students were given a folder with a list of questions that they worked to answer. Once they had the answers correct, they checked with the teacher, and if they were all correct, they received a small prize. Then, they moved on to another folder with a different grammar skill. Once those answers were correct, they received another small prize. They worked through 5 folders, or as many as they could, during the time allowed. The standard addressed during our 5th grade language arts rotation was communicating using the conventions of English language. For example, using and identifying the 8 parts of speech: nouns, pronouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs, prepositions, conjunctions, and interjections. In our language arts rotation, students worked individually or in groups to work on identifying different parts of speech and working to sharpen their grammar skills. Students were given a folder with a list of questions that they worked to answer. Once they had the answers correct and were checked by the teacher, they received a small prize. Then, they moved on to another folder with a different grammar skill. Once those answers were correct, they received another small prize. They worked through 5 folders, or as many as they could during the time allowed.
In art with Mrs. Keller, the students were working on some Valentine's hearts that they were drawing very abstractly. They got to kind of work with partners to figure out how they were going to draw their hearts step by step, and each heart ended up looking different. In music with Miss French, the students got to do a mystery song activity created by Katie Mullins. In the activity, the students were given multiple choice questions to review some of the content they've been covering the last few months. And the answers to their review questions gave them different notes on a staff. Once the students had the notes figured out, then they went to a piano on their Chromebooks. And that piano, once they played the songs on the piano on their Chromebooks, they were able to listen and figure out what song their answers created. So they got to listen to and create some really cool popular songs.
There were a multitude of standards addressed for 5th grade's science activity during Rock Your School Day. They included engineering design, Earth's systems, and matter and its interactions. You will see why we were able to incorporate so many of these standards once I describe the activity. The students played a life-size version of tic-tac-toe. They were divided into 2 teams. One representative from each team came to the front and were given a question to answer regarding one of the 5 science units we work on in 5th grade. This is how we were able to incorporate so many standards. The first person to buzz in with the microphone got to answer the question. If they were correct, they could either add an X or O to the game board or move one of their team's pieces to block the opposing team.
In library, our students got to listen to some book talks about some really good music books that they probably never knew we had in our library. There were some fiction books, there were some awesome biographies, and some informational nonfiction books that they got to hear about. And then they got to check out and pick those awesome music books.
The 4th grade standard addressed for Rock Your School Day for 4th grade was engineering design, which involved defining a simple design problem reflecting a need or want that includes a specific criteria for success and constraint on materials, time, or cost. Although the activity they did could really meet the needs of several other standards, once I describe the activity, you'll see why. The students completed a Quizlet Live. This was a wonderful opportunity to incorporate technology into the day. The Quizlet covered the vocabulary for the scientific method: question, hypothesis, materials, procedure, data, and conclusion. This is why I said it could fall under several standards, because the scientific method can be applied in several different areas. Once the students completed the Quizlet, they went on to complete a virtual field trip to California. Perfect time since we were freezing here. Why not visit somewhere warm? While in California, they visited the California Science Discovery Center, where they were able to virtually meet and talk to scientists about different science-related careers.